Hey everybody, Seth V here for the Knife Center. It's that time of the week again. Time to check out the coolest new knives that have just hit our shelves. Let's jump in. So first up, we've got a couple of new SOGs. These we're pretty excited to finally have in. These were unveiled at Blade Show, and this is the latest version of the SOG-TAC. This little guy here is the SOG-TAC AU Compact, coming in with just under 3 inches of blade, D2 steel for $124.95. So I'm going to talk about this one mostly, but most of what I'm going to say will apply to the larger version as well. Let's start by talking about the new locking and deployment mechanism of these. These are automatics, and they feature a modified version of SOG's XR lock, a crossbar locking system, but in this case, it is used to flick the blade out automatically. When it comes to automatic knives, there are a couple sort of competing schools of thought for deployment. There are those that want to have a safety for that extra security in the pocket, and those that don't for maximum speed of deployment. SOG have done something really cool here. They have integrated the safety into the mechanism in a way that makes it functionally sort of invisible. The safety on this knife engages when you push the XR lock forward. So when that's engaged, the knife is not coming open in your pocket or elsewhere, but when you go to deploy it, undoing the safety and deploying the knife have been integrated into the exact same motion. So you simply grab hold of the bar and pull back. And in one fell swoop, you've unlocked the safety and deployed the knife all at once. It's pretty cool. I think it really solves a lot of the problems that some people have with automatic knives with safety, while still allowing those who wish to have one that extra peace of mind. There's a lot to like about these new knives. They're very thin. They're rather lightweight. This small one comes in at 3.2 ounces, but the large is where you really see the weight savings. This one with just under 3.5 inches of blade only weighs 3.8 ounces, which in the hand for such a wide and kind of large feeling handle, it does give you the impression of lightweight, and that is much appreciated. Like other crossbar locking systems, this is totally ambidextrous, both in just the way that you operate the lock and also the knife itself. We've got an ambidextrous deep carry pocket clip here for right or left hand carry. Well, I don't know if I'd quite say deep carry, but it is a loop over clip, so it should work with just about any pair of pants. The action on these is pretty snappy. As you can see, we've got spring tension that pushes the blade all the way to the end of the travel, so no concerns here about misfires. And yeah, that safety is, I've just never seen anything quite like it. I think it's really clever. Again, it makes the safety invisible if you don't even want to think about it. The handle scales look and even kind of feel like aluminum, but they're actually a molded plastic. Nice grippy feel. Again, if you handed this to me and told me it was aluminum, I would believe you, except for the fact that it doesn't have that cold metallic feel. Good ergonomics here. Kind of just a classic tactical handle shape. We've got a nice comfortable drop to the handle, a few finger scallops to give your fingers something to hold on to, and a pretty aggressive guard here at the front to keep your hands from sliding forward in a thrusting cut. The blade on both of them is a tanto shape, flat saber grind. Not going to be the sliciest, but I don't think that's the design intention here. Definitely a working knife. Even though the grind isn't all that slicey, the blade stock is actually pretty thin, so I think these are still going to be pretty aggressive cutters, all things considered. Let's pick up the small one again, show that deployment. I think of the two, the small one is even snappier, just less mass to move with that spring. It really wants to fly out there. One thing I was doing is I was sort of playing with these knives before we started filming. If you want to disengage the safety without opening the knife, just hold it closed with your fingers and pull back on the tab, and it'll stop before the blade comes open. And So before we move on, just wanted to say the price on this large one is $149.95. So sticking with the automatics for a minute, we've got a Microtech, and this is the latest version of their mini Troodon. The Troodon's been in the Microtech lineup for, geez, as long as I can remember, but this mini version is new, and this particular variant with the two-tone coated blade is new as of just a few days ago. These are super cool. I'm a big fan of these small automatics. There's just something really fun about an automatic knife that's kind of shrunk down to these proportions. With just under 2 inches of blade, these are California compliant. And yeah, I mean, it's a Microtech, it's an OTF, it's gonna be snappy, great double action, both in and out. I could do that all day.
Oh great, we've given them a toy.
They feel toy-like. I mean, they make you smile, but there's no doubt that this blade can do some serious cutting. This one in particular is made from M390, and we do have a true dagger grind here. Both these edges are sharp, so please, no choking up on the blade. On the back, we've also got a glass breaker for a little added functionality, and unlike some of the previous generation of Microtech OTFs with the glass breaker, it's actually not sharp. It's just a little ball bearing here at the back, so it shouldn't present much discomfort in the pocket. The pocket clip is very deep carry. It's actually mounted from the back, so it's going to be totally flush except for that glass breaker. And it's also reversible, so this is another one of those totally ambidextrous knives. These little guys come in at $315 right now, and in addition to this two-tone version, I think we have a satin blade and a stonewash version, which are a few dollars cheaper as well. If you're not familiar with Microtech, these are all made in the USA, and they actually serialize each one, and in addition, even write the month and the year that this was made. So if you happen to buy this one and keep it for years to come, you'll always know when and where it was made. Sticking with the small automatic out the fronts, we have a new version of the HK by Hogue Micro Incursion. This little thing is sweet. Somehow it manages to feel even smaller than that mini Troodon, just under the 2-inch mark, making it California compliant. The blade steel here is 154 cm, and these are $148.71 right now. These also are made in the USA, and great action, very definitive, very fast. The thing about these small automatics is that the form factor screams tactical and the size screams toy. And I just love them. I think these are just so much fun. Lefties or righties are gonna have the same experience here because the pocket clip is deep carry and ambidextrous. Yeah, great deployment. Unlike that double-edged dagger on the Microtech, this drop point shape gives it a little bit more like multi-purpose utility. Obviously you can choke up, you can put your finger on the blade, get right up next to the tip, make this small knife feel a little bit bigger as you're using it. The handles are gray anodized aluminum, feel pretty lightweight but sturdy. I think we have a bit of a nod to HK's firearms. Reminds me of like the slide on a handgun. But mercifully, they've left a smooth patch on the handle right underneath where the pocket clip goes. So in and out of the pocket, you're not going to be tearing up your fabric. Hogue manufactures these for HK in the USA. And as we've said on this channel many times before, Hogue does phenomenal work. Their factory edges are some of the best in the business. Very, very refined. They almost seem to strop them or polish them a little bit extra before they leave the factory. So yeah, you just get very fine edge right out of the box. All right, we've got some more small knives ahead, but the next two are not automatics. First one is the Reate T2500. This is a little flipper. I think this silhouette has been in stock before, but not this exact variant. We got a couple of new ones. The one I pulled that really caught my eye was this beautiful orange G10 inlaid. The color just really pops with the blue anodized hardware all over and the orange inlay. Super cool look. These little knives were designed by Tashi Barusha in collaboration with Reate. You can always tell a Tashi design. There's something just kind of angular and muscular about his designs that I always notice right away. This is one of a whole series of knives in the T followed by several numbers range. They all kind of correspond to the blade length, so the T2500 has a 2.5 inch blade. The blade is made from M390. We got kind of a subtle two-tone look on this blade with a satin belt finish bevel and a stone-washed flat. It is almost full flat grind, but again, we can see just a little bit of the grind line up there. Yeah, the way that these are put together is pretty cool too. Rather than having two slabs on either side as the handles and a backspacer or standoffs in between, kind of holding everything together, they actually mate right here in the middle. It's almost seamless, but you can see where they meet if you look closely. It's really cool. It also kind of helps protect your fingers from the edge here, especially as you go to flip, which I really appreciate on a small knife like this when there's not a lot of real estate to grab onto in the first place. Got a milled titanium pocket clip. As for the ergonomics, definitely a 3-finger knife. I don't know of anybody who could fit 4 fingers on this, but it's definitely made to be a 3-finger knife. It's comfortable. You know, I think this would be perfect, especially in a pinch grip where you can kind of squeeze all 4 fingers on, get that finger up there, do some detail work. For a high-end small EDC, it doesn't get much better than this. These are $192 if I didn't say that already. If orange G10 isn't your thing, we also have ones with carbon fiber inlays, marble carbon fiber, and even an all titanium build with a kind of a milled pattern in this section. Reate always does impeccable work, and you know, even though the knife is small, we get all the trimmings here. Ball bearings in the pivot, a titanium frame lock with an over travel stop and lock bar insert, just impeccable. Next one on the table is this little guy from Berg blades. So these are going fast. If they're sold out by the time you see this, I do apologize, but keep an eye on the new knives page. That's where stuff goes up first. I feel like I can always identify a Berg blades design from his blade shapes. He kind of has this signature cleaver shape with the real chopped off tip here. It's pretty utilitarian as long as you don't mind a relatively wide blade. All that blade width gives you a nice chance to grind a keen edge. In this case, the edge geometry might surprise you. I think it's a little thinner than you'd expect, just given the way that this knife looks. So it should slice relatively aggressively. With a nice swedge here towards the tip, you're going to get that trapezoidal profile that really just moves smoothly through materials, it's almost aerodynamic as it moves through. This model is called the Mini Slim, and it is going for $285 right now. These are manufactured for Berg by We Knives, so the quality is going to be great. And you know, like Reate, we sort of get all the trimmings here. We get ball bearings in the pivots, lock bar, over travel stop, milled titanium pocket clip. Yeah, every one of these that I've handled, and I unboxed several, were all perfect. The blade steel in this case is CPM 20CV. Excellent stuff, very stainless, great edge retention. Definitely everything you want in a premium EDC knife. Fairly minimal branding on these as well. We just have the maker's mark on the blade, excuse me, and also engraved here in the backs, on the inside of the backspacer. Several variants of these we have now. This one has a black stonewash titanium handle, but we also have anodized colors and ones with coated blades as well. That is, if they're not sold out yet. To me, the deployment feels pretty natural doing the so-called Spidey flick, but you can also use your thumb. Very smooth running on those ball bearings, and the ball bearings are ceramic, if I didn't say that already, which is important to me because it really wards off any possible corrosion or any sort of buildup of that rusty gunk in the pivot. Yeah, ceramic bearings are the way to go for long-term durability. And yeah, love to see it. So moving from high-end production pieces to some seriously exotic custom knives, we've got new Bones flippers from Jeff Park. So Jeff Park is actually a sort of protege of Ken Onion. In this full custom design from him, we can kind of see that. Ken likes to do this inset liner lock thing, and it's also present here on this Bones flipper. This one in particular comes in at $995, but we also have some less expensive mid-tech versions if you really are hankering after this design and want something from Jeff, but just aren't willing to spring for a full custom. The details on this are just what you'd expect at the price point. I mean, when you get into custom knives, what you're paying for, in addition to just supporting directly the artisan who created it, is the kind of attention to detail you don't see anywhere else. The inside of this frame have been individually milled, giving them kind of a cool hidden texture that catches the light as you spin it around. The pocket clip has been treated with this full spinal column design. Just super cool, super cool. Every little bit has been poured over and just refined and finished to perfection. I think even this pivot, it looks like some kind of forged titanium, zircuti. The site doesn't say exactly, but yeah, that to me looks like some kind of zircuti or one of those forged titanium. Very cool, colorful, kind of ripply design. The action is spectacular, snappy, authoritative, not gonna have any misfires here. And this design is just, it's kind of playful. I mean, he's having fun with it. It's called the Bones, and we've got crossbones on the pivot, bones on the pocket clip. I think I would call this a gentleman's tactical knife. I don't really like using that term, but I must admit it's kind of descriptive here. It's fancy, it's fast, it's flippy. Blade is 3.3 inches long, a hand rub finish, and it's made from RWL 34, which is actually made by Damasteel. Great stuff. Really takes a keen edge. It's one of those sharpener's steels. I have a couple knives in it, and it's consistently one of my favorite blade steels to sharpen. It just doesn't seem to take much work to get screaming sharp, and I think that's probably why you will see it on a lot of custom knives, because the makers themselves love to work with it. Next up, another wild one from D Rocket Design, aka Daryl Caston. This is the Jupiter. So we have a couple of these right now. This one right here is fully decked out in Damascus handles and a Damasteel Damacore Sanmai blade. It comes in at $850 right now. We also have kind of a more plain Jane version with M390 and just plain titanium for $550. So the design on this reminds me a bit of maybe a Case Sodbuster, kind of that classic peasant knife silhouette, but with maybe a bit more of a snub nose blade shape going on here. What really makes this design unique though is this locking mechanism. We just did a video about locking mechanisms. This was not on it. It goes to show there's new locks coming out all the time. Although I don't know that I'd call this knife, this lock new exactly. It's more like a new implementation of a liner lock. So the way that this works is there's a button on the show scale that you push to disengage the liner, and the blade comes part of the way closed. You let go of the button, and then you can flip it the rest of the way closed. Pretty cool, kind of combining the elements of a traditional sodbuster that you'd probably have to use two hands to open and close with some of the snappy deployment that you get from a liner lock. It's not something that I've ever seen before. totally de-rock it. I mean, he loves to play with these kind of mechanisms. I had the chance to meet Daryl at Blade Show, and it was fun to watch him geek out over everyone else's new knives and new locks and vintage strange things he was finding there. He's just a lover of mechanical, playful designs like this. So this is right up his alley. The button here takes a fair bit of travel in order to get that liner lock to disengage. So squeeze it in, the blade will disengage, and it's resting on the detent ball. You can either flick it closed or just use two hands for a little more discreet operation. Feels like the blade is hollow ground here, pretty thin behind the edge, but the way they've implemented this blade shape, it thickens up quite a bit at the tip. So no worries about a delicate tip breaking here. This is kind of a bruiser up here, actually. This design, it's kind of a combination of some elements of old school knife design with the sodbuster influence, some very new school stuff with the adventurous locking mechanism, and in kind of a similar vein, the way we get a dynamic mixture of old knives and new knives, we've got another one from Finch. This is the Cherry Bomb, coming in at $135 right now with 154 cm blade steel. There's nothing about this that reminds me of any slip joint or old traditional knife in particular. It's more about the implementation here. We've got a stainless steel frame with this bolstered look and dyed red bone handles, which is not something you see on very many modern knives, but is a material I really love on a knife. Even though it feels smooth, it's still kind of tacky to the touch, so you get a good amount of grip, and it has a warm, natural look that just can't be replicated with synthetic materials. Even though the materials on this knife are a bit of a throwback, we've got a thoroughly modern deployment method in this flipper. Works great. It reminds me a little bit of the last Finch knife that we got in, the Devil's Finger, I believe. I would even call this a smaller version of that with just about 2.6 inches of blade. I think this would make a great compact EDC or backup knife, almost like as a substitute for a slip joint you might carry. In another nice little high-end touch here, I've got a milled titanium pocket clip, nice and springy, gonna have a cool, classy look in and out of your pocket. Really like what Finch is doing these days. Again, just that dynamic combination of old influences and new materials and techniques. Love what they're doing over there at Finch. And I don't know if they've all been like this, but this shield is actually glow in the dark. So charge it up with a black light or some sunlight and should be able to see it glow.
How about a no light?
Actually, can I see that? Let's do a little fact check here. Oh, yep. Definitely glows. Definitely glows. Next on the table, we've got a new one from Boker Plus and HEA Designs. This is the Hunter. I believe we've actually seen this design before from HEA Designs directly. That was very much a premium knife, decked out with titanium frame lock. This is comparatively much more affordable, just $92.96. And we have a little bit less premium materials here with a stainless steel frame lock and D2 blade steel. Still very capable. In fact, I might even prefer this version just for the value that it brings. It certainly looks very high-end, very refined in the details. All the scales have been given a nice little contour. This milled pattern adds a fair bit of grip with this kind of center section acting as a kind of a magnet for your fingers as you're moving it around. Gives you a good spot to index as you move between different grips. This is a front flipper and it works quite well. I think even those who usually struggle with front flippers shouldn't have much of a problem with this. And even if you're totally front flipper impossible, we've got a nice hole in the blade that you can use to thumb open. Maybe I can do the flick. Hey, there we go. Can even flick it open. One of the things I like about this front flipper deployment as opposed to some other ones on the market is if you don't actually want to snap the blade open, you can push it the whole way open, which you can't say of every design out there. Pretty cool, definitely a well thought out design. The blade shape is pretty unique. We've got a lot of belly on this, pretty much, well, not just pretty much, all the way from the sharpening choil to the tip is just a nice, gentle curve. Aggressive clip point here, almost like a little bite's been taken out of the blade there. It brings the tip down a little bit below the center line even, and makes it pretty thin for some nice splinter picking duty. I always appreciate the utility of a really thin tip. There's just, I mean, the tip is the most useful part of the blade. Whether you're, trying to get into some little spot to scrape something out or just picking the dirt from under your fingernails, I like a nice aggressive tip, and the HEA Hunter definitely delivers. We've got a little bit of symmetry too in the design, especially when it's closed, the way that the same clip's been taken out of the back part of the handle. And I gotta say, I was thinking that this was going to affect the ergonomics. It looks awfully pointy here at the rear, but no, I don't feel the point. Even if I'm holding it, say, in a reverse grip, I mean, I wouldn't want to work with this like this all day, but rounded, smooth, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I would hazard a guess that even slightly larger than average hands would still find this pretty comfortable.
Okay, also David.
Fact check me there too, yeah. There we go, I'm really getting that flick down. Yeah, this, I could see, especially as this breaks in, I think this is gonna be really fidget friendly. And with D2 steel, G10 handles and a frame block, great little everyday package here. Fidget time over. Let's move on to the next one, a much less fidgetable knife. This is indeed a fixed blade from Night Elements. This is the Element, coming in at $172 with A2 blade steel. So I'd be a little tempted to call this a karambit because of the finger ring here in the handle, but in this case, I don't think I'd do it, even though, well, first of all, we don't have a hawkbill blade shape here. We have this drop point or harpoon. And even though you can certainly use it in a reverse grip, I really think that this makes more sense in just a standard grip with your pinky in the finger hole. The ramp here in the harpoon blade is just a natural place for your thumb to rest as you're bearing into a cut. Yeah, pretty generously sized handle here. There's no scales or anything to hold on to, but we've got plenty of length for slightly larger than average or even large hands. Maybe we need a new term for knives like these. It's almost like a crossover between, a karambit's kind of speed and the way it just locks into your hand around this finger ring, but we get a more general purpose blade shape. The blade stock on this is pretty generous, and the flat saber grind is relatively low, so this thing is not a slicer, but is going to be super tough. The tip, while definitely acute, is nothing like the splinter picker on this little guy, so I would not hesitate to really push this to its limit. A2 is a nice, tough tool steel. Can't forget the sheath here. We've got Kydex, nice good retention, snaps into place no problem. And to attach it to your belt or MOLLE system, gear, however you want to carry it, we've got a little pull the dot strap. So thread this through one of the holes. You could set it up for horizontal carry, vertical carry, however it works for you. Looks like it'll work with a large tech lock, small tech lock, probably not so much. As I'm thinking now about the kind of crossover design of this little guy, I can see this working really well as a soldier's knife, maybe a soldier's backup blade, you know, strapped to a pack or to the back of some gear. Nice and flat, you know, it's not going to be too bulky on your chest plate or whatever rig you're working with out in the field. And I think Jason Knight, the designer of this knife, had something like that in mind. Next up, a dagger from Hinderer. This is kind of the latest installment of a knife that stretches all the way back to 1939, in fact. This is the Eck Commando dagger. John Eck, a knife maker who started manufacturing these in Connecticut originally, wanted to contribute to the World War II war effort, even though he was not a soldier. And he designed his kind of ideal combat dagger. The Eck Commando knife went on to be something of a tactical kind of legend. You know, we can see in this design inspirations from classic daggers of the past, the Fairbairn Sykes, for example, but modernized and ruggedized, and you know, the term overbuilt didn't necessarily exist back then, but I would call this version especially overbuilt. We got 01 steel, very tough stuff, and this comes in at $475. It's interesting to see Hinderer making this knife, but it makes sense. The Eck dagger has actually kind of been passed between companies over the years. I think Blackjack was making them for a couple of years. K-Bar was making them most recently. So Hinderer is just the latest in a long line of knife makers to take on this design. And it's very faithful to the original in many ways, but definitely has a bit of a Hinderer spin on it. The thing I first noticed was here at the tip. It's kind of a subtle compound grind. So I believe these main bevels are hollow ground, and then at the tip, it's going to be hard to see with this blade coating, but it's flat ground for extra thickness. So even though it is a dagger and is made to pierce and be thin up at the tip, that flat grind gives it a bit more strength so that you can really, and literally, push this knife hard. The handle, I'm not sure of the proportions of the original, but the handle on this is pretty huge. I mean, if I choke up behind the guard here, check how much is sticking out behind my hand here. I mean, that would be very easy to use as a smasher, you know, improvised blunt force object. And we got the iconic Eck knife kind of scallops in the handle, which provide some grip and kind of give your fingers nice flat spaces to rest as you turn this knife in your hands. Got a nice scallop here up at the front between these guards for doing that kind of Fairbairn Sykes technique with the thumb here as a push dagger. Feels very natural and comfortable. We only have a few of these in stock. Hopefully we'll see more, but I love that Rick is taking up the mantle of the Eck Commando knife, bringing it out to kind of a new generation of knife collectors. We've even got John Eck's signature on the blade. Can't forget the sheath. Here we've got a beautiful Kydex affair. Snaps into place. Large tech lock on the back. Ambidextrous. Not that it matters with the dagger, but it is what it is. One last cool little detail before we move on. The coating on the blade here, it's not a DLC or a Cerakote or any of those modern coatings. It's very much a throwback. This is actually Parkerized, which is the coating that gun makers used to use, and probably still do, to protect carbon steel from corrosion. So it's got a unique look, almost like a chalky feel to it, but it still has some kind of metallic sheen. It's really cool. It's one of my favorite blade coatings out there, just based on aesthetics alone. And I think it kind of seals the whole package of being both modern and traditional at the same time. Very much still an Eck dagger. All right, last fixed blade of the day is a new one from K-Bar. This is designed by Jesse Jarosz, the Camp Turok. The Turok, if you're familiar with the Jarosz and K-Bar collaborations, has the same handle as this, but a shorter blade. The Camp Turok has 8 inches of 1095 carbon steel. You know, to me, this feels like a extension of the project that K-Bar's been working for years with Ethan Becker on to kind of deliver overbuilt survival knives. But with the Jarosz stuff, the formula's rebalanced a little bit. So Beckers are known for being bulletproof, indestructible, you know, even sharpened pry bars, some of them. The Jarosz stuff is a little bit more, maybe less survival and more hunting or even food prep. The balance point on this reminded me of like a heavy chef's knife almost. It's right in front of the handle. So if you're holding this kind of like a chef's knife in a pinch grip like this, it feels very, very lively, much faster and lighter weight than it does when you're choked back on the handle here. And because the balance point is a little further forward, I think you could get some light chopping done. I wouldn't want to take this into the forest as an axe replacement or anything like that, but you could definitely do some branch clearing, light machete duty even. The handle is optimized for that too, I think, especially with a lanyard here at the end. Got a little bit of a flare to catch your fingers as you're swinging, and a nice finger scallop here to kind of pivot around. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it wants to chop hard, but I think it's built to be capable of that. Yeah, tough 1095 steel is going to hold up great in the field. Easy to sharpen. We got a coating here for corrosion resistance, and a nice high saber grind that gets relatively thin towards the tip. So slicing, food prep, you know, camp kitchen knife duty, I think this would do well. The handles are molded plastic, given a pretty aggressive contour here. It feels quite round and quite comfortable in the hand. This is definitely one of those knives you can use for a long time before feeling any fatigue. Although with a knife as heavy as this, I don't know that I'd necessarily want to try and do fine carving with it or anything like that. But price on these is $119.95 if I didn't say that already. The sheath might actually be my favorite part of this package. I love these Jarosz sheaths that K-Bar does. They're molded plastic, but the retention's amazing with this little latch here. And you know, they've just really thoughtfully done. You got a nice push-off pad here to extract the knife easily. Fabric belt loop for comfortable carry. Extra retention strap here. You can even take this whole drop loop off if you want to just say, I don't know, throw this in a pack or something. Yeah, built to take with you to the campsite, out into the wilderness, off the beaten path. Definitely something you would be well equipped if you had on your hip. That does it for this week's new knives overview. Check the links in the description if you'd like to get any of these knives while you're over at KnifeCenter.com. Be sure to sign up for our knife rewards program. So when you put down your hard-earned money on any of these knives, you can get some free money to spend on your next one. I'm Seth V for the Knife Center. I'll see you later.
Or David, whatever.